everyone, it's Angel and welcome to my channel. So today I'm really excited to talk about this topic because it means so much to me. And that is how being vulnerable and how vulnerability actually saved my life. I have been binge watching Brene Brown, and she's this amazing researcher and storyteller that talks about the power of vulnerability. And it really reminded me about what role vulnerability played in my life and how it is currently versus how it was before. So I kind of want to take you back, I guess, to where I was 3 years ago and how vulnerability was one of the sole processes or changes that I made that really helped bring trajectory of my life, of my career, of my relationships, and changed everything for the better. 3 years ago, I was not in a great place. I was working at this modeling agency, and I didn't really love what I did. I thought I did, but it was really because I was so not in touch with myself. And it was a career where I didn't have to be in touch with myself. You know, I could disconnect and I could kind of bring out in a lot of ways the worst of myself in terms of, you know, being critical of others and like judgmental of others, which I think working in a modeling agency, I was casting male models. So there are a lot of really amazing people in that industry, but I think for me it was very detrimental. I wasn't really happy. I had undiagnosed depression and I was unwilling to go to therapy or be diagnosed. And I was really unhappy. And when the pandemic hit in March of 2020, that pretty much changed everything for me. I had to look internally within myself. And one of the things that I realized is that I wasn't being vulnerable with me. And what that means is I wasn't letting myself into the hard places to look at, to look through my scars and my traumas and really sit with myself and be honest with where I was going, and what I had been through. I grew up in this really tough immigrant family, very much in the suck it up, you can get through it kind of thing. And that is how a lot of my family members achieved success, both financially and in their own lives. And I had always been a little bit more of an emotional person, and that worked until it didn't, and it manifested into really poor mental health. And so when the pandemic hit, I was laid off. I had to really take a lot of time to look at myself. And it was really tough at first. And I decided to go to therapy. And therapy changed everything because it forced me to be vulnerable with another person in a way that I had never had before, and with myself. I remember there was this one exercise that we did where she told me to write a list of my dreams, or to do like a bucket list, to write a list of everything I have on my bucket list. And I broke down crying because I realized that I didn't believe in myself so much that I had no dreams, no aspirations, and no goals. And I had no idea I even felt that way until I allowed myself to be vulnerable with my therapist. And I allowed myself to truly sit with my emotions. And yes, that was terrifying, but that was a shift. After that, I went to like group therapy and art therapy, and I further explored that within myself. And I have been in therapy for 3 years, and that weekly and constant sense of vulnerability that I would have with myself and with my therapist changed everything. Because I think in a lot of ways, you can't change or heal the darkness inside of you or work with the darkness inside of you unless you recognize that darkness is there. And for me, vulnerability was a way that I could recognize all parts of myself, both the good and the bad, the ugly and the beautiful. And I could work towards becoming a person that I had actually really wanted to be. And as I continued in that journey, the greatest act of vulnerability outside of therapy was sharing my journey on the internet. So as I was really healing from my mental health, there came a point during Christmas of 2020 where I reached a really low point in my mental health and I had to call the suicide hotline. And after that point, I decided to reach this like epic stage of vulnerability, and I didn't really even try. It was more of I was trying to do things that were outside of my comfort zone, and in that way that was an act of vulnerability in itself. And an act about that I wanted to do outside of my comfort zone was posting on TikTok. And posting on TikTok became, it was first just like these playful videos, and that felt really vulnerable because I was scared of showing like my face to thousands if not millions of people. And then as I went on, I started doing these challenges for myself, like I think the first one that I did was 21 days of conquering my fears, and then I did like a 30 days of facing my fear of failure, 365 days of becoming the woman I've always wanted to be, and right now I'm doing a 365 days of discomfort challenge. And so in these challenges, it required an intensive amount of vulnerability. I would share my highs and my lows, my mental health struggles when my room looked a mess, and some of the biggest traumas that I had been through during this 365-day journey. I cried a lot of happiness and joy. I shared stories about my breakup. I shared stories of some other really traumatic events. And I also shared my happiness, because in a way that is really vulnerable for me too, because joy is really scary. But in that way, I started sharing my healing journey of trying to become a better person on the internet almost daily. And it was a daily act of vulnerability towards people on the internet that I had no control over what they would do or say. And yeah, I got death threats. I got people saying the most terrible things you could say to a woman, to a woman of color, to a queer woman of color, and it was jarring. But in that way, I established this community of people, both on my Instagram and my TikTok, and here on my YouTube, of people who, of people that I guess like resonated with my story. And in that way, I reformed connection. And not only did I reform connection with myself, I formed this connection with other people who had potentially felt the same way as I did, and I could help them feel less alone. And that's the thing about vulnerability, is that as scary as it is, and how Western society, and I think society as a whole, sees vulnerability as a weakness, it is actually one of our greatest strengths. It's one of the most powerful means of connection. And as human beings, I think there is often a time where we forget that we are all human, that there are certain things that bonds all of us together in humanity, and the more that we are vulnerable about that, the more connected we can feel with each other, and the less alone that we can feel in our struggles. Vulnerability has helped me connect with myself. And honestly, this helped me create a career where vulnerability and my own process, my own journey, has become a way that I could help people, where I could help others using social media as a tool to connect with people. And I never even thought that was possible. And it would never have been possible if I hadn't allowed myself to open myself up and be vulnerable with myself, with others, with society. And it's scary, of course. We'll be criticized, people will be judged. I was judged, and it's scary, but I always think that it's like life is too short to live in fear of what's inside of our own hearts, right? I'm still learning that, and I still struggle a lot with vulnerability, and I think it's something that I'm working on the daily, but even just in a couple of years, I've seen how much that has changed my life. And I want to continue to work on it. I've formed stronger friendships, I reconnected with some really good friends, and I feel a lot less alone. Vulnerability has changed my life. And I think the big thing is just taking that first step and knowing that though there might be people who criticize you or judge you, if you're proud of yourself and if you hold your head high and remember that, you never know how far vulnerability can take you. It can be a superpower, and your greatest strength. Thanks so much, everyone, for listening, and I will talk to you soon as I talk about another topic that I have in my head about life. See you later.